Hello, my dear friends. Today we begin the story of a woman who ruled one of the greatest empires in history. Yet inside her heart, she was often a lonely girl searching for love. Her name was Queen Victoria. She ruled Great Britain for more than 60 years. Her reign became so important that an entire era was named after her, the Victorian Era. During her time, the British Empire expanded across continents. Industry grew, science advanced, railways connected cities, and Britain became one of the most powerful nations in the world. But behind the crown and the empire was a woman, a daughter, a wife, a mother of 9 children, and later a widow who never fully recovered from losing the love of her life. Victoria was born on May 24, 1819, in Kensington Palace in London, England. Her full name was Alexandrina Victoria. At the time of her birth, no one expected her to become queen. Her father, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, was the 4th son of King George III. There were several people ahead of her in the line to the throne. But life is unpredictable. Her father died when she was only 8 months old. Victoria grew up without knowing her father. This early loss shaped her deeply. Victoria's childhood was not free or joyful. Her mother created what became known as the Kensington system. This system was designed to keep young Victoria isolated and dependent. She was rarely allowed to play with other children. She was never left alone. She even had to share a bedroom with her mother. Every movement was controlled. The idea behind this strict system was political. If Victoria became queen at a young age, her mother and Conroy hoped to control her decisions. But instead of making Victoria weak, this strict upbringing made her independent. She grew quiet, observant, and strong inside. Even as a child, she developed a sense of dignity. When Victoria was 11 years old, something changed. One day, her governess showed her a family tree. For the first time, Victoria realized something shocking. She was next in line to the throne. She studied the paper quietly. Then she said softly, "I will be good." Those simple words revealed her character. She did not say, "I will be powerful." She did not say, "I will be famous." She said, "I will be good." Even at a young age, she understood responsibility. On June 20th, 1837, when Victoria was just 18 years old, King William IV died. Early in the morning, officials came to Kensington Palace. They found the young princess sleeping. She was awakened and told, "You are now queen." She walked into the room calmly, still in her nightgown, hair loose, face pale, but steady. In that moment, a teenage girl became ruler of a vast empire. One of her first decisions as queen was powerful. She asked to sleep in her own bedroom. It was a small act, but it showed her independence from her mother's control. Victoria was young and inexperienced. She needed guidance. Her first prime minister, Lord Melbourne, became her political mentor. He was kind, patient, and intelligent. He taught her how government worked. He explained political debates. He helped her understand the responsibilities of constitutional monarchy. Britain was not ruled entirely by the monarch. Parliament held significant power. Victoria's role was to advise, warn, and encourage, not to command absolutely. Under Melbourne's guidance, she matured quickly, but she was still young. She still longed for companionship, and soon, love would enter her life. Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha was Victoria's cousin. They first met when she was 17. She found him handsome and gentle. But because she was the queen, she had to be the one to propose marriage. In 1839, she did. She later wrote in her diary how deeply she loved him. She described his beauty, his kindness, and the comfort she felt in his presence. In 1840, they married. Their wedding was grand. But more important was their emotional connection. Victoria did not marry for political alliance. She married for love, and that love would shape the rest of her life. After marriage, Victoria and Albert formed a close partnership. Albert was intelligent, disciplined, and interested in science and reform. He supported education, industry, and moral responsibility. Although he was not king, his influence on Victoria was powerful. Together, they built a family. Victoria gave birth to 9 children. Victoria, the Princess Royal, Albert Edward, later King Edward VII, Alice, Alfred, Helena, Louise, Arthur, Leopold, Beatrice. She loved her children, but motherhood was complicated for her. Victoria often found pregnancy difficult. She disliked the physical weakness it brought. Yet she valued family deeply. Through strategic marriages, her children would later marry into royal families across Europe. She would eventually become known as the grandmother of Europe. Albert helped modernize the monarchy. He encouraged moral behavior, discipline, and seriousness. Together, they promoted family values. One of their greatest achievements was the Great Exhibition of 1851. It was held in the Crystal Palace in London. It celebrated industry, science, and global progress. Albert played a leading role in organizing it. The exhibition showed Britain's power, but also the power of progress. Victoria admired her husband deeply. She wrote about him constantly in her diary. She trusted his judgment. For the first time in her life, she felt emotionally secure. But life, once again, would change suddenly. She had found love with Prince Albert. She was building a family, and she was learning how to rule. But ruling an empire is never simple. Behind palace walls, there was affection and family life. Outside those walls, there was politics, unrest, and responsibility. Victoria now had to grow, not only as a woman and wife, but as a monarch. The 19th century was a time of enormous change. Britain was transforming. Factories were rising, railways were spreading across the land, steamships were connecting continents. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping society. Cities grew quickly, wealth increased, but so did poverty. Workers demanded better conditions. People asked for voting rights. Political debates became intense. Victoria had to rule during this period of rapid transformation. Unlike earlier monarchs, she did not rule alone. Britain was a constitutional monarchy. This meant Parliament made laws. The Prime Minister led the government. The Queen's role was different. She advised, she encouraged, she warned, but she still held influence, and her influence mattered deeply. Throughout her long reign, Victoria worked with many prime ministers. Some she liked, some she strongly disliked. Her early mentor, Lord Melbourne, remained special to her. He guided her gently when she was inexperienced. Later, she worked with Sir Robert Peel, whose political ideas she did not always agree with. She often had strong opinions. Victoria was not passive. She wrote letters to ministers. She expressed her concerns. She followed politics closely. One of her most famous political relationships was with Benjamin Disraeli. Disraeli treated her with warmth and respect. He admired her. He flattered her in ways that made her feel valued. She appreciated his charm and intelligence. In contrast, she found William Gladstone too serious and too moralizing. Victoria preferred warmth over cold intellectual lectures. These relationships show something important. Though she was queen, she was still human. She responded to personality, tone, and emotion. Victoria's reign was not peaceful in every moment. Between 1840 and 1882, there were several assassination attempts against her. One of the first happened just months after her marriage to Albert. a man named Edward Oxford fired 2 shots at the royal carriage. Victoria was pregnant at the time. The bullets missed. Instead of hiding in fear, she showed bravery. The very next day, she rode publicly through London again. She wanted to show strength. This act increased public respect for her. People saw not just a queen, but a courageous woman. Other attempts followed over the years. Each time she remained calm. Each time she continued her duties. Her resilience strengthened her public image. During Victoria's reign, the British Empire grew larger than ever before. It stretched across continents: India, Canada, Australia, Africa, parts of Asia. At one point, it was said, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." This meant that somewhere in the world, British territory was always in daylight, but expansion was not always peaceful. In 1857, a major rebellion broke out in India. It is known as the Indian Rebellion or the Sepoy Mutiny. Indian soldiers rebelled against British rule. Violence erupted. Many lives were lost. This event changed everything. Until then, India had been controlled by the East India Company. After the rebellion, the British government took direct control. In 1876, Victoria was officially declared Empress of India. This title increased her prestige. It also symbolized the height of imperial power. But empire brought moral questions. Was expansion justified? Was it fair to other nations? Victoria believed strongly in duty and empire. She saw Britain as a civilizing force. History, however, would later debate this idea. Despite political responsibilities, Victoria's heart remained deeply tied to family. She and Albert built a strong domestic life. They valued moral behavior, discipline, and education. Albert encouraged improvements in science and culture. He believed in progress. He helped establish museums, educational reforms, and cultural institutions. Victoria admired him deeply. She often depended on his judgment. He reviewed official papers. He gave political advice. He supported her decisions. Though he did not hold the title of king, his influence was significant. Together, they created a modern image of monarchy, not distant and cold, but moral and family-centered. By the mid-1850s, Victoria had 9 children. Raising royal children was not easy. Marriages were often political. Daughters married European princes. Sons prepared for leadership roles. Victoria loved her children, but she also struggled with motherhood. She often felt exhausted. She disliked pregnancy. Her relationship with her eldest son, Albert Edward, later Edward VII, was complex. She felt he lacked discipline. She worried about his behavior. Albert was stricter with him. Tension sometimes filled the household. Still, Victoria saw family as central to stability. She believed in strong, moral values. Her public image became one of domestic virtue. The royal family appeared united and respectable. This strengthened the monarchy's popularity. By the early 1860s, everything seemed stable. Victoria had love. She had children. She had political influence. But life often changes without warning. Prince Albert had been working tirelessly. He pushed himself too hard. He managed responsibilities, advised Victoria, and remained involved in reform. In 1861, he became ill. The illness worsened. Victoria grew anxious. She depended on him emotionally and politically. On December 14, 1861, Prince Albert died. He was only 42 years old. Victoria was devastated. The strong queen, the ruler of a vast empire, collapsed in grief. When Prince Albert died in December 1861, Queen Victoria's world shattered. She did not simply lose a husband. She lost her closest friend, her political advisor, her emotional support, the person who made her feel secure. Albert had been her anchor. After his death, Victoria entered a deep and long period of mourning. She wore black clothing for the rest of her life. She kept Albert's rooms exactly as they had been. His clothes were laid out daily. His shaving water was brought each morning. It was as if she refused to accept that he was gone. Her grief was not temporary. It became part of her identity. Victoria withdrew from public appearances. She avoided ceremonies. She avoided London. She preferred to stay in private residences such as Osborne House and Balmoral Castle. The public began to worry. Some even criticized her. Newspapers asked, "Where is our queen?" The monarchy depends on visibility. When the monarch disappears, confidence weakens. For many years, Victoria appeared rarely in public. She continued to manage government matters privately, but emotionally, she was distant. She often wrote about Albert in her journals. Her diary became a place where she expressed her pain. Grief changed her. It softened her in some ways. It hardened her in others. Albert had played a strong role in raising their children. After his death, Victoria felt overwhelmed. Her relationship with her eldest son, Albert Edward, Bertie, became strained. She blamed him in part for causing stress to Albert shortly before his death. She felt he had disappointed his father. Their relationship remained distant for many years. Victoria expected high standards from her children. She valued duty and seriousness. Some of her children found her strict and emotionally reserved, yet she cared deeply. Through her children's marriages, she connected royal families across Europe. Her daughter Victoria married into Prussia. Other children married into Russia, Germany, and other royal houses. Because of this, Victoria became known as the grandmother of Europe. Her family connections shaped European politics for decades. During her years of mourning, one figure became close to her. His name was John Brown. He was a Scottish servant at Balmoral Castle. Brown was strong, loyal, and straightforward. He treated Victoria not just as a queen, but as a woman in pain. He supported her during difficult moments. He encouraged her to go outside. He protected her physically and emotionally. Rumors began to spread. Some people whispered that their relationship was too close. There were even rumors of a secret marriage, though there is no clear evidence to prove it. Victoria valued loyalty deeply. John Brown's companionship helped her slowly return to some public life. After his death in 1883, she mourned him deeply as well. Once again, she experienced profound loss. As years passed, Victoria slowly returned to public appearances. She celebrated jubilees marking her long reign. In 1887, she celebrated her Golden Jubilee, 50 years on the throne. In 1897, she celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, 60 years of rule. By then, she had become a symbol of stability. The British Empire was at its height. Britain controlled vast territories around the world. Victoria was no longer just a queen. She was a symbol of an era of industrial growth, scientific progress, cultural change, imperial expansion. The term Victorian Era reflected her long influence. Despite her power, Victoria was human. She could be stubborn. She could be emotional. She could be strong-willed. She loved deeply. Her marriage to Albert was genuine. After his death, she never remarried. She remained devoted to his memory. Her diaries, which she wrote almost daily, reveal her inner thoughts. She once wrote that Albert was her life. Without him, she felt incomplete. Yet she continued her duties. That balance between grief and responsibility defines her character. In her later years, Victoria became physically weaker. She had outlived many of her children. Europe was changing. New political tensions were rising. Younger generations began to see her as a distant symbol of the past, but respect for her long reign remained strong. On January 22, 1901, Queen Victoria died at the age of 81. She had ruled for 63 years and 7 months, longer than any British monarch before her. Her death marked the end of an era. Queen Victoria is remembered in many ways: as a powerful monarch, as a symbol of empire, as a devoted wife, as a grieving widow, as a mother who connected Europe. Her reign transformed Britain. Industry expanded, cities modernized, science progressed. But her story is not only political, it is deeply personal. She was a young girl who once said, "I will be good." She tried to live by that promise, even when grief overwhelmed her, even when responsibility felt heavy, even when the world watched her every move. My dear friends, the story of Queen Victoria teaches us something powerful. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes strength looks like continuing after loss, carrying responsibility while grieving, standing in public while feeling broken inside. Victoria ruled an empire, but she also carried sorrow for decades. She reminds us that leadership and vulnerability can exist together. She reminds us that love can shape history. And she reminds us that even those who wear crowns are still human. As we close this journey, remember that history is not just about events. It is about people. People who love, people who suffer, people who try their best under enormous pressure. Queen Victoria ruled an empire, but her life was shaped by love and loss.